So the next question I want to answer in this video is, what about when the church is gathering and it's putting a risk to people's health? Or at least the state authorities are making the rule against churches meeting because they are concerned about the health of the community and those who are vulnerable, and the risk that church gatherings and the like will put to those people. And this is sort of an extension from the last video about what if the government's motives really are good, and Tom, you've established even if their motivations are good, that doesn't give them the blank check for all authority, and it doesn't mean we have to do whatever they say as long as they're telling us it's for our good. They're still restricted by God's definition of what their authority is. But how then do you think about the fact that, they're saying if you meet Christians, if people meet in large groups, you're going to be doing damage or risking other people's health. And, you've got to think about the vulnerable in society. And I think that this is a very powerful question because if you don't think it through it clearly, then you can feel very, very... It plays on the conscience. It's quite an emotional, not a purely emotional, but it's quite an emotional argument that it can make you feel, oh yeah, I'm guilty for other people getting sick. And it's a good question that we do need to genuinely think about. So should the churches be meeting if it's able to if it's even potential that it will pose a risk to people's health in the broader community? And this one I think will be quite controversial, but we really, I really have thought clearly about this, and I really do think the church needs to learn this. When the government tells us that we are keeping everybody safe and you don't need to be meeting, we have trillions of taxpayer dollars that we can pay out if you can't make money when you go to church, when you go to work because of these lockdowns and whatever. And so, we'll look after it. You don't need to worry about it. Stay at home. And they're telling us that. And amidst all of that, remember, then their aim is not to destroy the church. They're just saying, we've got the benefit of everybody involved here. Don't go to church. What is the Christian response? And I think the Christian response, at least in part, needs to include the fact that this is a world where people die. This is a world that God has cursed because of sin, that Jesus rules over, and he does not let anybody die early. Everybody die. All of our days are numbered. Every single person dies according to the sovereign rule and plan of Jesus on the exact day, minute, and second that they're supposed to die, in exactly the way they're supposed to die. God is sovereign. That does not mean we can be ruthless and careless with life. We're still meant to be very careful to uphold human life. However, some things are out of our control. This is a world where people die. 21st century is not good at knowing that in the West, but this is a world, and Australia is a country where people will get sick and people will die. Plagues do happen, pandemics do happen, outbreaks do happen. That doesn't mean that our rulers need to feel like they've failed politically if people die on their watch. This is a world that God has ordained that people die from sicknesses, from avoidable things. It's just what happens. The government does very well to protect its people, and it does have a responsibility to use the centralized funds to protect the people as much as is reasonable. But not to the extent that it breaks its God-given rules. So, yes, the government should take seriously the need to protect and sustain the life of its constituents and its people and its subjects and its civilians. But that does not mean that all, for the sake of safety, all other rules of God are thrown out the window. For example, these are some very obvious examples. They're not allowed, in the name of safety, to go and drop bombs on another country out of an act of extreme preemptive maneuvering. That country over there didn't do anything. We didn't have any intel saying they were planning against us. But our countries like theirs and countries like ours have a history It's probably going to be safer if we just stop them from developing the technology they have by dropping an atom bomb on them. I think that would be wise, or at least go through and send an airstrike through on their 6 major cities. If the government was to do that and tell us, trust us, we've got Australia's health and safety in mind, we all know that that would be evil. Yes, they're trying to protect us, but there is a limit to that. They have overstepped it. Or, a slightly less obvious one, but clear from Scripture, if the government decided to provide free abortion pills to every teenage girl so that they could spare them the genuine pain, genuine bodily damage, genuine danger, genuine emotional damage of being teen mums, and they think that will also help the economy. That's not good for the economy to have lots of teen mums out of work without, family support and all that. Let's do the right, good thing. We're trying to protect you. We will provide free of charge, no consent from the parents, free abortion pills to every teenage girl when she turns 14. That would be, even though they're telling us it's for the good of people, objectively, they are overstepping their God-given duties, and God's morality limits their ability to keep everyone safe. And even though it's in the name of health, it doesn't mean that they're allowed to break God's laws. That would be an unjust law that Christians must oppose. Or, in applying to this scenario, the government, in the name of health and safety, and in the name of genuinely trying to stop people from getting sick, which is at least part of their job, they are not permitted to go so far that they would stop churches from meeting so that they don't risk getting sick. That is overstepping their God-given authority by a long shot. Not only because there's not a direct line between getting sick and dying. It's not as if everybody who goes to church dies, or even everybody who goes to church gets the disease that everybody dies of, or even everybody that goes to church gets the disease that most people die of. It's not that. It's everybody that goes to church might possibly get the disease or spread it to other people, and somebody at some point may die because there's been an increase in human interaction. Like we said in one of our prior videos, if they stopped Rotary clubs from meeting, if they stopped union marches from happening, if they stopped the rugby games from happening for those reasons, that's probably more within their authority. But when they say things like the church cannot gather, that's on the same level of overstepping their authority as if they said every family must also break apart. Each child, each parent should live in separate houses. The government's going to be enforcing this. Everybody should have separate. They're breaking down God's design for the family. Not trying to destroy the family, just we're applying the same rules to the family as we do to the football matches. No, they're not allowed to do that. That is a divinely instituted sphere that they are not allowed to touch and meddle in. The holiness, the sanctity of the family. And so it is also with the church. They're not allowed to tell the church not to meet for the sake of sickness not spreading. This is a world where people die. We cannot escape death. Much of what is going on in today, I'm not blaming everybody in this, and I'm not encapsulating everybody in this, but a lot of what is going on today is reactionary, based from fear in the attempt to escape this death. It can't happen. The world does not function well when it is governed by people who are afraid. It does not function on fear. It always leads to chaos and anarchy when fear is the rule of the day. You cannot govern they should govern in a way that protects people, but while not breaking God's laws. Now, here's what some Christians and some pastors will say, and I want to be gracious in this. Some of them will say, you know what, in large part, we agree with you. We agree that the government doesn't have the authority to just say on a whim, lock down your churches. In fact, they might even say, we agree that, like in China, like in North Korea, like in Afghanistan, like in Iran. The church needs to go underground and blow off the command of the government that says don't meet, because they don't have that authority. We agree with that. And it's up to each church to decide when it will open, and not the government, right? That's especially as a Baptist, but even in other views of church ecclesiology and polity, it's up to each church and each church authority to decide when and if they will meet. It's not up to the government. It's not up to the state. But they might say, these Christians, and I've got friends who hold this position, these pastors, and they're my brothers, they're going to say, but in this instance, in this COVID situation, it's not that. In fact, we're taking the advice of the state to close our churches. We're not so much obeying the state over Jesus. So they want to say it is technically possible that we should disobey the government at certain times if they're just closing down the church for no reason. But at the moment, they're saying it's for health. And we're not so foolish as to say that, well, as long as they say it's for health, they get all authority. No, we agree that that's not true. However, we believe them that there really is a health issue. So here's what they'll say, that my Christian brothers and pastors may say this. We just believe the government when they say there's a huge risk, the death tolls are high, it's going to climb, this variant is dangerous, we don't know what's going to happen. It'll, meeting in groups larger than 100 or in rooms without masks or whatever. That will increase the uptake of the disease and it will be devastating. Some pastors and Christians are obliged to simply say, I believe them. I don't think they're acting out of malice here. I genuinely agree that meeting our church together would be irresponsible before the Lord. I think God would hold me accountable for that and say that it was sin to gather people when there was so much of a risk. But prima facie, right, on the face of it, it's not obeying the government over Jesus. It's just that there is a genuine health risk. Now, every Christian agrees with that principle to a point, myself included. To a point, it is okay to, and we all have the category, I hope, where we would listen to the government and not hold church on a Sunday, depending on the risk of a situation. For example, if my government told me a foreign nation is coming, they're doing air raids, they've started in Darwin, they're moving south, everybody stayed home, black out your houses, we'll turn off all the lights, power grids are going out, at 7 p.m. or whatever, and they say, stay home, we're in real danger, then I would trust the government that there is real danger here, and I would, I would think that a responsible elder board would communicate to their church, let's not meet. We will put ourselves in huge danger and our community, and it's an acute, special circumstance. I agree that principle is biblical, and that may also apply in the situation of a plague that is, killing 50% of everybody that it touches, or whatever, a huge death rate, and it's so easily spread that if you gather, you will likely get it and give it to people. We're talking like medieval plague type thing, bubonic plague. If that was going on in our city, yes, it would also be responsible enough to say, look, government says there's this huge risk of outbreak. It looks very deadly. Yes, let's withhold gathering for a time, and we'll keep deciding about when we'll gather back together or what will be the wise way to go about this. So I agree with the principle. But at this current stage in COVID and the response to COVID, I cannot agree that that's the situation we're in. I do not think that applies, but that's me. That's our church. I think that each church and each pastor needs to take that before the Lord, consider the seriousness of the effects of that decision, and also be wise and open-eyed enough to look back over the last 18 months and say, is the ground shifting at all? Are the goalposts shifting? Is the danger what they say the danger is? Are our, government press releases as reliable as we're being told they are. And wherever you land on any, I'm just mentioning all the different things you would have to consider. At the end of the day, each Christian pastor and congregation are responsible for how seriously they took the requirement of God to gather together bodily, physically, and worship. And the decision is up to each individual congregation. But I wanted to give some room for the fact that there is that position out there.